Have you ever wondered why the rest of the galaxy stays so quiet? Why? In a universe teeming with ancient civilizations and shimmering star cities, no one ever came to visit the third planet of our sun. To the rest of the galaxy, we aren't a neighbor. We are a warning. They looked at our home and saw a graveyard. They saw a world that should have stayed empty. But what if the very thing they feared most was the thing that made us who we are? What if the hell they described was actually our greatest playground? The Xylanthi are a delicate species. To them, habitable means a planet with zero seismic activity, a temperature that never varies by more than 5 degrees, and a gentle purple sky that never knows the violence of a storm. They move with a graceful, floating elegance, their bodies built for worlds where gravity is a mere suggestion. So, when their grand explorers first scanned the planet we call Earth, they didn't just find it uninhabitable. They found it offensive. Class-12, the High Scholar had announced to the Galactic Council, his voice trembling with a mixture of disgust and terror. The gravity is a crushing weight that snaps standard skeletal structures. The atmosphere is a volatile cocktail of reactive oxygen. The tectonic plates are in a state of constant, violent warfare. It is a death world, the apex of cosmic lethality. The galaxy agreed. They put a digital fence around our solar system and labeled it with a single, terrifying warning: do not land. Survival probability, 0. For 10,000 years, they watched us from a safe distance, convinced that any life that managed to spark on such a nightmare would be stunted, fearful, and brief. They waited for us to go extinct. They expected us to huddle in caves, weeping at the cruelty of our mother planet. But they forgot one thing. They forgot that when you grow up in a forge, you don't become a victim. You become the sword. The conflict began when a Xylanthi research vessel, the Starseeder, suffered a catastrophic reactor leak. They were forced to make an emergency landing in the only place they could find, the rocky, wind-swept plains of the American Midwest during the height of the spring storm season. To the Xylanthi, the site was a vision of the end of the world. The sky had turned a bruised, sickly green. The wind was a physical force, screaming at 200 miles per hour. Massive columns of rotating air, what we call tornadoes, were carving paths of destruction through the landscape. Why is the planet screaming? Kalen, the ship's navigator, cried out as the hull groaned under the pressure. Why does the very air want to kill us? How could anything survive a place where the sky itself turns into a weapon? They huddled in the center of their ship, their delicate limbs trembling as the 1G gravity pulled at them like a leaden shroud. They prepared for the end. They waited for the death world to finish its work. But then, through the external cameras, they saw something that shattered their understanding of biological reality. They saw a vehicle, a crude metal box on wheels, reinforced with steel plates and spinning sensors. It wasn't fleeing. It wasn't hiding. It was driving toward the massive, rotating vortex of the storm. And then, they saw the humans. The Xylanthi watched the monitors in a state of pure, unadulterated shock. 2 humans jumped out of the vehicle. They weren't wearing pressurized environmental suits. They weren't praying for mercy. They were laughing. Woohoo! Look at the size of that debris ball, one of the humans shouted, his voice caught by the ship's long-range microphones. He was holding a camera as if the apocalypse was nothing more than a spectacular light show. Get the probes ready, Miller. She's a beaut. Kalen gasped, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. Are they playing? In the middle of a Class-12 atmospheric event? Do they not realize that the wind could flay the skin from their bones? The humans moved with a terrifying efficiency, while the Xylanthi struggled to even stand up in Earth's crushing gravity. These humans were running. They were lifting heavy equipment, shouting over the roar of the thunder, and grinning as the rain lashed their faces. They didn't see a death world. They saw a challenge. They saw a thrill. Suddenly, the wind shifted. A massive piece of farm machinery was lifted by the vortex and hurled toward the Xylanthi ship. It slammed into the Star Seeder's airlock, jamming it shut and trapping the delicate aliens inside a dying vessel. Without a second thought, the humans saw the crashed ship. They didn't know who was inside. They didn't know if they were friends or foes. They only saw someone in trouble. "Hey, we've got a downed craft here," the human named Miller yelled into his radio. "Looks like some kind of civilian tech. Get the hydraulic jaws. We need to move now." The Xylanthi watched through the cracked viewport as the humans approached. The storm was at its peak. The sky was a swirling chaos of black and green. To the aliens, this was the moment of their death. Then, they saw the human spirit in action. The humans didn't have anti-gravity tech. They didn't have force fields. They had steel, they had muscle, and they had an unbreakable will. They braced themselves against the 300-mile-per-hour winds, their heavy boots digging into the mud. They used massive hydraulic tools to shear through the jammed airlock. When the door finally gave way, the human, Miller, reached in. He saw the frail, trembling Xylanthi. He saw their hollow bones and their terrified eyes. He didn't recoil in fear of the alien. He reached out a massive, gloved hand and gently lifted Kalen. "Don't worry, little guy," Miller said, his voice a warm rumble that cut through the storm. "You're safe now. We're going to get you out of the wind. Just a bit of a breeze, nothing to worry about." As the humans carried the Xylanthi to their reinforced storm chaser vehicle, the aliens looked back at the tornado. It was a monster that had leveled forests and shattered stones. And yet, the humans were talking about where to get burgers once the rain stopped. Weeks later, after the Xylanthi had been rescued by a council ship, this time with heavy-duty thrusters and reinforced shielding, Kalen stood before the Galactic Council. He didn't bring back a report of a graveyard. He brought back a lesson. "We were wrong," Kalen said, his voice echoing through the silent, golden chamber of the council. "Earth is not a death world. Not to them." He projected a video the humans had given him. It wasn't a video of war or suffering. It was a video of humans surfing 50-foot waves. Humans climbing sheer rock faces without ropes. Humans jumping out of airplanes just to feel the rush of the air. "They don't survive that planet," Kalen whispered. "They relish it. They take the very things that would kill us, the gravity, the storms, the heat, and they turn them into games. They call it extreme sports. They call it adventure. They call it fun." The council members looked at each other in a stunned, humbling silence. They looked at their own pampered, fragile worlds and realized that they had stayed still while the humans had been forced to grow. "What is the new classification?" the High Scholar asked, his arrogance finally broken. Kalen looked at the blue marble on the screen, a small smile touching his alien lips. "The classification remains Class 12, but we must add a note for any future travelers." He paused, the weight of his realization filling the room. "If you are looking for a paradise, stay away. But if you are looking for the bravest souls in the galaxy, go to the Deathworld. Because only there will you find a species that looks at the apocalypse and asks, 'Can we do that again?'" The galaxy finally understood. We weren't the victims of our world. We were the victors. And the planet that was meant to be our tomb had become the playground that built the masters of the stars. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. Understood. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars. Humanity may be small, but our spirit is as vast as the void itself. See you in the next sector.